Today, what I want to talk about is how to choose trial presentation software. You might be trying to decide between the wide variety of trial presentation software that's out there. I'm going to give you kind of the 3 things that I look for in terms of which trial presentation app is going to be the right one for your trial. The first kind of rule of thumb for me is if there's 300 exhibits or more. If there's less than 300 exhibits, I generally am going to push my clients towards using TrialPad, because then they can use the iPad. It's really intuitive. It only takes me about an hour or less to train the second chair attorney. Sometimes I get to train the partner, but also the paralegals and other staff on how to use the app and get everything up and running. If there's more than 300 exhibits, then you end up kind of scrolling a whole bunch, and I don't think that's really a very convenient way of getting through a large amount of documents. Yes, you can use folders, but folders and the way that they're handled in TrialPad has never been my favorite thing, and so I think that 300 exhibits or less is kind of the good rule of thumb for trials that fit on an iPad. The second thing that I kind of listen for when I talk to a client and they ask me which trial presentation software they should use is whether they're going to be doing a lot of video impeachment for this particular trial. If they are going to do a lot of video impeachments, then I'm generally going to push you towards some of the laptop-based software, and unfortunately, it's Windows only. Yes, you can technically use a MacBook Pro or a MacBook. I've even made a video about it. I'll post a link to it up here, and here's the thumbnail for it over here. But I don't think it's a really great user experience, especially because when you're using Windows in Parallels on a Mac and want to use an extended desktop, it just starts getting a little bit goofy. And so I don't really recommend Macs, but you're going to be looking at Windows PCs, and the software you're going to be looking at, in my opinion, is really down to Director and OnCue. There's people that are diehard fans of each one of those two. Most of the hot seaters these days, I think, are going to start becoming fluent in both. So either one that you pick, it's going to be a matter of preference. Right now, I'm currently switching over all my hot seaters to OnCue. They were trained on Director, but they're going to learn both. And we're probably going to, if it's up to us, use OnCue. Now the third thing, and probably the most important thing in terms of deciding which trial presentation software is right for you, is the people. Who's going to be running this software and who's going to be running the devices? That's going to be really the most important piece of deciding which trial presentation software to use. And this is a rule that I think, depending on who the person is, can trump the first 2 things, whether it's 300 exhibits or more, or whether there's a lot of video impeachments or not. Depending on the person, you might need to use an iPad. And so a lot of times we will help clients put all their exhibits, even if it's more than 300 exhibits, onto an iPad if the second chair has to be the one for budgetary reasons or for other tactical decisions, has to be the one that's running the exhibits. Then we will help them put the exhibits on there. TrialPad can handle more exhibits than that. It's not my favorite way to run it, and we always work with the attorneys to figure out different ways we can organize a case file so that the large jumbo cases can still be manageable. The other thing that we've helped clients with is how to still conduct video impeachments even though they're going to use the iPad. TrialPad, the app, doesn't at this time, and I don't think that there's any hint of that coming. TrialPad does not have native video impeachment capability, and so if you want to be able to do that, you've got to figure out what your clips are ahead of time, work with a videographer or work with your in-house litigation support team to make the clips ahead of time, and then import those into your iPad in TrialPad as if it were just a regular video file or other exhibit. If the person is not that comfortable using a more complicated piece of software like the laptop-based software, like OnCue or Director, then I would say go towards the iPad. It's okay, but be aware that there's going to be some limitations when you're using an iPad for cases where it really doesn't kind of fit for that. And for the cases that I tend to get invited to work on, when I go hot seat a case, if I have to travel for a case or if we're doing one locally here, it's usually we're talking about cases where there's 1,000 exhibits or more per side, and there's tons of either DEP designations or video impeachments or both that we need to be doing throughout the course of the trial. And so to be able to manage that large of a database of cases, the iPad really starts to become a little bit constricting, especially in a lot of federal cases that I work on. The general trend now seems to be to really choreograph everything into very exquisite detail, at least for the directs. And so you're constantly bouncing back and forth between regular exhibits in your trial presentation software, and also a direct examination PowerPoint presentation that you might be using. And so being able to bounce back and forth very quickly is something that iPads just generally don't do well. So it's another reason why on jumbo cases, I think that it's time to put the iPads aside. But that doesn't mean you have to use the super fully featured laptop trial presentation software for your more run-of-the-mill cases. So most of the cases that we support here in Cook County in Chicago in state court are about 2 weeks or a week and a half, and have about 200 or 100 exhibits or less. And for those cases, we frequently recommend the iPad and using TrialPad, and we do trainings at least once a month, if not more. Sometimes it's once a week for attorneys to be able to run that software themselves. It definitely fits really well for that. So the answer to the question of how to pick the right trial presentation software is, it depends. A law school answer for you for a legal problem. I do think that you're gonna have to have a couple of different arrows in your quiver in order to have the tool that's right for the job. Think of it like you gotta have a lot of golf clubs in your bag if you wanna shoot a really good score. And so in terms of cost, yes, it can get expensive, but if you're already gonna buy OnCue or Trial Director, you're looking at $700 or $800. OnCue is a subscription, so over time that becomes a little bit more expensive than that. On the other hand, for about the same price, you can get an iPad or an iPad Pro plus the TrialPad software for the cost of just another license that you would use for OnCue or Trial Director. So think of it that way. Try not to think of it as, oh, we have all these like redundant pieces of software. They're not redundant. They do different things. If you don't like the golf analogy, think of it like knives in the kitchen. The chef's knife does one thing, the boning knife does another, and the paring knife does something very, very different. They're all knives, they all are blades, but you gotta use the right tool for the right job. So that's my take on how to pick the right trial presentation software. If you have any questions about this, let me know in the comments. But something I also want to start doing in these videos is, if you have any question at all about litigation technology or just computers in general, Adobe Acrobat, how to connect your phone to a TV in a conference room, anything at all, let me know in the comments. I'd like to start ending a lot of these videos with questions that come from the comments, so feel free to ask me anything. If I can't answer it, I'll let you know in the comments that I can't answer it. If I can answer it, I'd like to add like a minute or two at the end of each video answering like kind of a viewer question. I'd love to do that. So help me out, put some questions down in there. So thanks again for watching, and I will see you on the next one.